Tonight, U.S. officials tell me it was Russia that hacked the White House last year, gaining access to an unclassified computer system that contained the president's private, unpublished schedule. At the time, Vladimir Putin, of course, was in a tense showdown with the White House over Ukraine.
Welcome to MidPoint, the managing director of Oceanic Advisors. He has more than 30 years' experience in designing solutions for diplomatic, defense, and national security purposes. J. Michael Waller. Mike, thanks so much for being here today.
Good to be with you.
It would seem as if we are, quite frankly, about at the level of a 6-year-old when we get caught like this, because we hear these stories, we try to basically explain them and figure out why we're not better at it, but are we simply just put so far behind the curve that we're not thinking imaginatively anymore to try and stop these attacks?
We're extremely naive. It's not a question of our technological sophistication, because it's the best in the world. It's the naivete of our leaders, bureaucrats, lawyers, politicians, everybody else except the engineers who do the cyber work.
What are they missing then? Let's drill down into this whole naivete. What are they really missing here that they need to understand, and that, in your opinion, is right in front of their face?
Well, they don't have a view of how the world works. The piece that I did today in Investors Business Daily highlights a different dimension of Hillary Clinton's private emails, which is quite different from the Russian hacking of the White House, or might be different, we don't know. But here's a case where she configured her system for personal privacy purposes, the way you or I would on our own emails, but not for national security purposes. So when you're a sitting Secretary of State, you're a #1 target of every spy service in the world. And she didn't seem to grasp that fact when she was secretary.
Let's grasp this. We are told that they believe that this came out of what is called phishing, PH phishing, or spear phishing, if you will. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not just as simple as sending someone an email, making it look like it's a real email, and then somebody clicks on something, they don't bother to check it, and bang, just like that, you grab control of a computer, or you have a Trojan that continues to follow you wherever you go?
Yes, and you have a easy to figure out password also.
So we're talking about people here in 2015, and again, we're just kind of putting some idea onto this, who probably still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, are we really talking about being that foolish?
Yeah, and remember, these people have been vetted to have top secret security clearances. This is not just your average, political hack. These are real people entrusted with our national secrets who are either setting this up or going along with it. Oftentimes, the engineers who set it up warn the policymakers of how to use the systems properly, and the policymakers just don't want to deal with it.
Okay, when you say they don't want to deal with it, why? Time, money, effort, intelligence?
Well, it's easier to put in an easy-to-remember password rather than a very complicated, long one, because it's just a hassle to do it otherwise. When
you hear that these are the Russians, and that's apparently where everything is going to, they found code markers, telltale codes as well, that tell them that it was coming from the Russians. Is there any doubt in your mind, your international experience, that if it comes at this level and goes to the White House, that this is more than just a couple of guys sitting in their deck house somewhere having a couple of Mountain Dews and chips?
No, this is an intelligence service called FOPSI. It's the Russian equivalent of the National Security Agency. They have the best and brightest of the entire former KGB and the newer generation who came on. They're first rate at what they do, and they're dead serious.
So you've been there, about a minute or so that we have left. You know these, you've studied this. What needs to be done? Is there any one thing that immediately drops a hammer here and stops this from happening, at least stops the bulk of it, that is simple to do?
Yeah, the danger is not to politicize it, because the Republicans are just as bad. The point is to hold everyone accountable, find what the problems are, and find solutions that are doable, and have criminal penalties for those who violate them. This is the same. Being negligent like this is the national security equivalent of drunk driving.
But we can't go after them criminally, of course, because they're in Russia. So what do they need to do right now? Software, anything?
No, the American policymakers who allow this to happen by sheer laziness.
Okay.
They're the ones. No, you go after the Russians by attacking them in kind.
Is that just it now? What we really need to be doing is we are facing a war right here that if we're smart, we're going to really go on the offensive here and just basically play the same game?
Absolutely. We have to be attacking them all the time, 24/7, in a very serious strategic way, because they've been doing it to us, and they're doing it at levels that exceed any levels the Soviets did it to us during the Cold War.
And it would seem like that naivete will work its way in there one way or another if we really want to go on the offensive or not. J. Michael Waller, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Thank you. Developing story that we are following right now. There has been a verdict in the case of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber. They were scheduled to read this verdict about 20 minutes ago. We are waiting. This is live outside the Boston courthouse where they are awaiting the verdict decision. We'll bring it to you and reaction right here on MidPoint.